I heard about his healing, of his cleansing power revealing, how he made the lame to walk again and caused the blind to see. And then I cried, dear Jesus, come and heal my broken spirit. And somehow Jesus came and brought to me the victory. Oh, victory in Jesus, my Savior forever. He sought me and bought me with his redeeming blood. He loved me ere I knew him, and all my love is due him. He plunged me to victory beneath the cleansing flood. I heard about a mansion he has built for me in glory, and I heard about the streets of gold beyond the crystal sea, about the angels singing and the old redemption story. And some sweet day I'll sing up there the song of victory. Oh, victory in Jesus, my Savior forever. He sought me and bought me with his redeeming blood. He loved me ere I knew him, and all my love is to him. He plunged me to victory beneath the cleansing flood. Amen. Well, I said I wanted to read a couple of passages real quick here. The pastor's conference theme was the Beatitudes, and so I want to read that. And then there was a secondary passage as well. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be satisfied. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall receive mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when others revile you and persecute you and utter all kinds of evil against you falsely on my account. Rejoice and be glad, for your reward is great in heaven, for so they persecuted the prophets who were before you. And then throughout the pastor's conference, they did little, they called them pastor talks. Think TED Talks, 10-minute talks with pastors, and they went through the fruits of the Spirit. So we'll read that real quickly as well. Galatians 5:22 and 23. But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. Against such things there is no law. Worthy of every song we could ever sing, worthy of all the praise we could ever bring, worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you, we live for you. Jesus, the name above every other name. Jesus, the only one who could ever save. Worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. We live for you. Holy, there is none but like you. There is none beside you. Oh,
I will build my life.
And I will build my life upon your love. It is a firm foundation, and I will put my trust in you alone, and I will not be shaken. And I will build my life upon your love. It is a firm foundation, and I will put my trust in you alone, and I will not be shaken. Holy, there is no one like you. There is none beside you. Open up my eyes in wonder and show me who you are, and fill me with your heart and lead me in your love to those around me. And I will build my life upon your love. It is my firm foundation, and I will put my trust in you alone, and I will not be shaken. I will build my life upon your love. It is a firm foundation, and I will put my trust in you alone, and I will not be shaken.
Lord, thank you for the security that you give us, not only in the next life, but in this life, that we are firm in you. We are not able to be shaken because, the worst that can happen is that we lose our life and be with you. And so we have confidence in this world because of you. And so, Lord, help us to live in that way, to look at life that way, to minister in that way. We love you in Jesus' name. Amen. You can be seated. So, how many of you, just before we get started, how many of you have been to a Southern Baptist national meeting before? Okay, so we have a few who have. So Brad likes to quote this. I think it's an accurate thing to say that it's part tent revival, part business meeting, and part cage fight. And it kind of is like that. It's a real unique environment, unlike anything else. And I didn't realize it. I was listening to a podcast today that was a recap of the different motions and stuff. I was just trying to remember and kind of walk back through some of the things I knew we'd want to talk about tonight. And they made mention that it's the largest, they called it the largest deliberative gathering in the world, which I didn't really think about it that way. But this year, there were some 18,000 people, including guests. I think there was 12,000 and something messengers that gathered, which is up. There were several years there where there would be 8,000, 9,000, continues to grow, which is a good thing. We want our churches to be a part of this cooperative relationship. And so when you get there, it's obviously just a mass of people. Suzanne and I, we flew in and got there late morning that Sunday because the flights in the afternoon were like $150 more per person than if we left that morning. And so that's why we weren't here that Sunday. And so we got there mid-morning and got settled in our hotel. Went over and registered that afternoon when registration began, and immediately, standing in line to register, the family reunion part starts. A pastor friend of ours from Ohio that when we were all younger, used to lead youth camps together. And so we're walking, and here comes Dean coming in the line. You know, they've got, it's like at Disney, you're in the little line going back and forth. And so Dean, and, you know, we're hugging necks and connecting and remembering. And so that's part of what this is like. It's a different kind of thing. And even among the folks from our association, we pretty quickly ran into people from here. Maston and Donna Jackson from Hampton's Crossroads were there, and Riv and Emily Temple from Bear Cove. And there was a couple of folks from Laurel Creek. We didn't see them. And then there seemed like one other church from here represented. I'm trying to remember. It doesn't matter exactly. You don't have to have all those details. But that's part of the whole gathering. Then beginning on Sunday night is the pastor's conference, which I like to refer to as the encouraging part. The pastor's conference Sunday night and Monday all day, because it's actually a worship service and preaching. And so you're in a gathering with pastors and pastors' families primarily, and you have different preachers from all over. And like I said, this year's pastor's conference theme was the Beatitudes. And so each sermon was based on a different beatitude, and then in between the sermons they would have someone come up and do these little pastoral talks. And so that was Sunday night and Monday, and then Monday afternoon, I'll tell you about that in a second. I put a couple of some pictures in just to give you, so Beatitudes of the Pastor. This was the pastor's conference. Go ahead, David, let me just, because I think this will help cue me what I was going to say. All right, so Monday, one of the pastoral talks was Phil Newton. Some of you, Matt Sliger, this is the pastor that he served with until just recently when he retired. He was one of the speakers on Monday. He spoke on humility as one of the fruits of the Spirit. And he's just an elder statesman of the Southern Baptist Convention. And so it was a sweet time to hear him. Oh, yeah, this is a video. Play this if you can get the audio going.
And I will trust in you. Lord, I will trust in you.
Yeah, so Travis Cottrell, if you recognize him, a worship artist and worship pastor at Brentwood Baptist in Franklin, or in Brentwood, was leading with his team. But the choir and orchestra was from, what's the college in William Carey in Hattiesburg, Mississippi. And so that was college students that you saw that choir, and the orchestra also was folks from William Carey as well. So they were leading off and on throughout Sunday night and Monday, which is a comfortable place for me simply because Travis we're the same age, the same mindset. We were a part of the same church a long time ago. So it's like, it feels comfortable to me because of that. But that was a really encouraging part. Go to the next. I think I had a picture of, so they were doing Victory in Jesus. That was one of the things they did there that night. But so I wanted to show you this. These folks were sitting in front of us, and this gentleman was blessing my socks off. This is his wife, obviously, here on the left. But he was just, it was so encouraging to see this gentleman as he would worship and raise his hands, and he was wiping tears. And, it was just one of those things where, for me, it was a reminder of what you guys experience every week when you're singing within the congregation and we're encouraging each other. It was a really encouraging thing for me to watch that. What else do I have on here? Okay, so a family of churches planting churches everywhere for everyone. Monday afternoon, there was an event that the North American Mission Board put on for a couple of hours about church planting. They have they've started an organization called the Send Network, and it's basically about planting churches in North America. And one of the statistics that they shared that to me was eye-opening. The two continents in the world where Christianity is not expanding, North America and Europe. We're not growing here. We're no longer the Christian group, we're the non-Christian group. You understand what I'm saying? It puts things into a different perspective, you know? And so they were talking about this, and we have said all along from day one in private conversations, some of you in deacons meetings and probably from the platform at different times, one of the things that we have said as a leadership team is that we don't have a desire to grow a mega church, right, in Sparta. You know, if we grow to the point where this room begins to fill up, yeah, we'll have to start a second service and all that, but we'll be praying and are already praying about where the Lord might want us to send out 10 families in our county to start another church. We've done it before. That's how Hickory Valley got here. And so this is one of those things that in my heart, I really, as I look around and see lots of people moving in around me on the north end of the county, I think, okay, there's some churches here and there's people who love, but at the same time, I know that there's different personalities of churches and different personalities of people, and I think there's a lot of room for some new churches in our area. And so I was excited to hear about some of the things that they were talking about that afternoon. And it was a lot of statistics, and they have a whole plan of coming in and helping churches like ours if we were going to do that. And coming up with a long-term system of training, helping to recruit people who would be interested in that, and then training them to go out and those kind of things. It was a really encouraging time for me, simply because I feel like that's something the Lord's put on my heart to pray about, and I really feel a burden for our area. And so that was Monday afternoon. Let's see what we got. So one of the other kind of side events that happens throughout is that the seminaries host luncheons. And that was at the Midwestern Baptist Theological Seminary from Kansas City. They had they called it a micro conference where they were also talking about church planting on Tuesday, I believe. Suzanne was going to the minister's wife's thing. She's probably going to share a little bit about that in a minute. And I went to this. And so Dr. Allen, who preached here, is the president at Midwestern. And there were 1,300 people in this luncheon. I was blown away because normally it's like just a conference room and, you know, enough tables that they can get in there. But this room, they were 1,300 people in there at this luncheon. So anyway, those things are happening. All the seminaries host those. All the state conventions have events. The Lifeway, we went to the Lifeway breakfast on Tuesday. They have all the different organizations within the Southern Baptist Convention have events throughout that are mini encouragement times. A lot of times it's a meal. So anyway, I wanted you guys to experience and hear and know a little bit of some of these things. Do I have any more pictures? I think the rest. Oh yeah. So yeah, we were singing this song. The reason I took this particular picture though, this was during the actual convention on Tuesday and Wednesday. Once the business meeting starts, and so within the business meeting, just like with us, we try not to let it just be business. There's Tuesday morning is a convention sermon that's voted on the year before. Someone preaches that, and then Wednesday morning, or maybe it's Wednesday afternoon, I can't remember, is another sermon. And so there are worship times blended in. And so typically, whoever the president of the convention, his worship pastor and team will lead. And so Bart Barber is our current Southern Baptist Convention president. He's a pastor in Farmersville, Texas, of a church about the size of ours. And so I was curious to see what the worship would be like for his little church, like I say, in comparison to some of these mega churches, little church that's leading worship for 18,000 people and what that would look like. And so this was their team, and it was kind of pretty typical rhythm section with several praise team. It was great. It was excellent, but it was local church. There was no wondering, are these people professionals? No, they were local church musicians, which encouraged the socks off of me, because it's like, yeah, this is real people. This is not putting on the dog for all of us pastors. And so that was an encouragement. They did, of course, they had one set where they kind of had a little bluegrass band that led, and they did a lot of, it was really cool. And so anyway, the different things. Let's go through one more time. So you guys remember Carrie Dean, who preached here back in 2018. We didn't know that Carrie and Amy were going to be there, and we found out when we got there. So we got to spend a lot of time with them. Again, part of the reunion part. And then Riv and Emily, this is, if you don't know Riv, he's the guy that looks like Duck Dynasty on the left. He's the pastor at Bear Cove now. Super folks. We went to dinner with them one night and had a great time. And then we were outside the convention center, was an outlet mall, and so we picked up a couple of hooblooms and had ice cream with them. The funny thing, look at my hand. I'm holding that ice cream cone. It was like 350 degrees, and that thing was melting all over my hand. And they were like, okay, take a picture. And I was going, I'm trying to not get, I mean, it was really bad. So anyway, I think that's the last picture, wasn't it, David? Okay, great. So what I asked everybody to do that was on the trip, to come and just to share a few minutes of whatever was most impactful, or that they were the most moved by, encouraged by, concerned about, whatever, 3 or 5 minutes each. And then I wanted us to be able to just take your questions and discuss anything that so if you have a question about something that we talk about, just kind of make note, and towards the end, we'll take a few minutes and do that. So I'm going to transition down here so we can do that a little bit more freely. We'll put you on the end. What do you want? You want to go first and tell a little bit about the wives track?
I got to go along, which was kind of a treat for me to get to go with John. And as he said, it's really just a great time of just reconnecting with people that, especially the older that you get, you realize that there's more people that you know. And so that was a real treat, just to get to see people that we haven't seen in 20 years and 30 years. With a trip, there's always good and not so good. And so I have to tell my two not so goods to start off with.
There are not pictures of this.
There are not pictures, thankfully. It was really hot, wasn't it, guys? It was very hot. Like in a hot box, like humidity, like hot. I guess it was the second night we were there. We had gone from the convention center, went down to Gus's Fried Chicken. If you've ever had Gus's Fried Chicken, it's based out of Memphis. We were like, yes, we're going to go down there. So we went down there to eat. So on the way back, we're walking back to the convention center, and I'm just walking, and I look straight ahead, and there is a naked man standing right in front of me. Yes, that was my reaction too. I was like, oh my goodness. And thankfully it was the backside of the naked man, and I immediately just shifted and went the other way. I didn't know where he was, but I thought, I am getting out of his way. So I was like, well, I can say I went to New Orleans for the Southern Baptist Convention and saw a naked man. So not a good memory, but a memory nonetheless. So yeah, for me, being able to go on the women's side of it, it's kind of neat. They have a tract for women, like pastors' wives for the pastors' convention. We were together, but then on Monday morning, they had a separate tract that you didn't have to, but you could just gather as women, and they had different speakers like Donna Gaines from Bellevue Baptist in Memphis. She spoke, and a couple of other ladies. Some of the topics that they discussed were very pertinent to our culture. They had a lady named Katie McCoy. She's out of the state of Texas. She works with women's ministry in the state of Texas. And she addressed kind of just the whole feminism and the gender dysphoria, the gender confusion, and just how we as Christian women, how do we how do we address that? That we can't just stick our heads in the sand and hope for the best, because they are our neighbors and they are our friends and they are our relatives. And so how do we, she had a lot of factual information. In fact, I purchased the book because I thought I need to equip myself and not just think this is just what I think, but what does the Bible say? And then how do I respond to the culture like Jesus, so that we bring him glory in that. So just very challenging in that regard, but something I felt like that I needed to be reminded, and I feel like I need to learn more and be better equipped on how to deal with that as those situations arise. Donna Gaines spoke from 1 Corinthians 13 about what is love, and love is patient, love is kind, and how do we insert ourselves in that? Do we represent the Lord? Even as we look at that scripture, that was a great time. Kathy Litton spoke about the resilience of ministry. How do we stay faithful? How do we endure through trauma, through transition, and how do we stay faithful? How are we resilient in ministry? And then that was all Monday. Then Tuesday morning they have a pastor's wives luncheon that we went to, and I had gotten an email beforehand asking if I would host a table, and I thought, well, yeah, I'd love to host a table. I didn't know anybody, and so I just prayed that the Lord would put the people at my table that he would have me interact with. And I got a sweet group from, they said, the armpit of Florida that sat at my table, and I just connected even so much that we traded contact information, and it was a really neat time to be able to do that. I was at table 176, so there were probably 2,000 plus pastors' wives there. And the way I look at it, and as I've experienced in the past, anytime that you get people in one room that have a commonality, and in this room, these were wives. Some of them were mothers or sisters but specifically wives. There was just kind of a really neat feel in the room because you kind of get each other, you understand some of the uniqueness of being in ministry, and just to be able to talk and enjoy good food. That was really good as well. But Whitney Capps spoke for the lunch that day, and her theme was out of Colossians 1. And I just want to read that real quick. Colossians 1, it says, "He is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn of all creation. For by him all things were created, in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or dominions or rulers or authorities. All things were created through him and for him. And he is before all things, and in him he holds all things together. And he is the head of the body, the church. He is the beginning, the firstborn from the dead, that in everything he might be preeminent." And that was the theme of the pastor's wives luncheon, was Jesus over all. Jesus over all. So sometimes, she said, people keep us from seeing Jesus over all. And I thought, that's true. We kind of get focused on what's seen and we forget the unseen. And she encouraged us through that, challenged us. At the end, there was a poem that actually just a short little thing that she wrote. It actually was a prayer that she wrote. And I just wanted to share that with you just before I finish. But it's very thought-provoking. And it's written by someone you can tell who has been in ministry, has been involved in the church, whether as a lay leader or as a leader. But really made me think, and I hope that it will do the same for you. She says, "If we are people of Jesus over everything, we must choose the best over lesser things. Faithfulness over fruitfulness. Integrity over impact. People over processes and procedures. Collaboration and celebration over celebrity. Clarity over division. Service over success. Private transformation over public performance. Sanctification over skill. Building the kingdom over building a campaign. Healing over hurt. Forgetfulness and forgiveness over offense. Accessibility and availability over applause. forgotten over famous, Jesus over all. So that was just a real encouragement, just a challenge to me. And I just appreciate, from my perspective, I just appreciate y'all allowing us to go and being fed, being able to worship. You know, I worship at the piano, and that's where God has me in that role. But it's a real gift to be able to go away and be led by someone else I'm not in charge, that I just get to freely worship. And so that was just, for me, that was a huge blessing for me. And so I just appreciate y'all, your support, and allowing us to go represent you there.
Hello. I almost wore that exact same shirt today, so I'm glad I didn't. Yeah, thank you also for allowing me the chance to go. This was the second year. I went last year to Anaheim as well. So I can just give you a little perspective on the logistics piece that impacted me or that struck me was last year in Anaheim, I think there were 6,000 messengers there that were there to, conduct the business of the year for the Southern Baptist Convention. And this year there were 12,000 in New Orleans. And so it really struck me the importance of the location of where, as a convention, we decide to have this meeting, because obviously in this location, a lot more people like me could drive. I drove. And so, you had tons, the amount of family that was there with the messengers this year was hugely different. Like John said, I think it was 18,000 people were there, but there were 12,000 messengers, but they had wives and children and babysitters and everybody else with them in the convention hall in a lot of places. And out in California, it wasn't like that at all. It was a much different crowd, I guess. And so that just really struck me as a convention, how important it is where we have it. And, if you're going to have it in a place like California, that, we really strive to send representation there, because it's not there when it's in these far distances. So fortunately, the next few conventions, I think, are centrally located in the United States. So when it comes to Nashville in a couple years.
Although there was a motion to hold it in Maui.
Yeah, which was seconded. So yeah, I would encourage you to go. I mean, it's very eye-opening. There's a lot of issues that get talked about in the business meeting, a real wide range of issues. People bring motions from all across the country about different things. And so it's very eye-opening to see what people are passionate about in different quarters of the Southern Baptist Convention. So you can really learn a lot. If you don't know what's going on in the SBC, there's a lot of issues that people care about. There's lots to read about, lots of podcasts to listen to. And when you go to the convention, to the business side of it, you get just a wide range of things. And so it's very interesting to listen to what different people are passionate about, different issues that are affecting different parts of the convention, different churches, different entities, all those types of things you learn about. So it's an educational experience to go, for sure. The thing that I guess challenged me the most was the cultural piece. I love working with our children. So many of you in here work alongside of me with the children, but just walking down the streets there just reminded me again of how important it is in this moment with our children to really focus on hiding God's word in their hearts, to train them up in the way they should go. And of course, that's the parents' role as well, but for them each week to have that compounded on them, but now more than ever, that it's just insane. I had the fortune or misfortune of living in San Francisco for about 6 months in 2005, I guess. And it was crazy culturally what I experienced there. But some of the things that I saw in New Orleans right now, today, made San Francisco look great, from that time. And so I know in San Francisco, it's even worse now, but the culture is just, it's falling apart in front of us, as you all know. And so I was just challenged again, even though it was outside the convention, challenged again to, redouble our efforts with our kids here in this church.
Okay. Yeah, I want to thank you all for allowing me to go also. My second year, I went to Anaheim last year, and this year, and I agree with Nathan about location of the convention, because most Southern Baptist churches are in the southeast of the country, and so it's within driving distance. So you had all the churches from Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Tennessee, Florida, that could really represent the convention. And it is good to go if you get a chance. If you don't want to be a messenger, go as a guest. You can go as a guest. A lot of people were there just with their family to hang out, and you just go, and you can't vote or nothing or make motions, but you can just go and see what's going on, see how things work, because it is very complicated in some ways. But it is good to see that where you meet people, because most churches are our size. And there's a few mega churches, but most of them are our size, maybe smaller. And so you get to see how they operate and how very similar they are, but then how different they are. And then, my gosh, they got the same problems we do, so, and it's just very encouraging in that. And then just to see how God is moving in some of these places. I got to meet I met one of the leaders of the abolitionist movement for abortion. Great guy. And, they're doing amazing work where they're outlawing abortion in some of these states. And it's because of their work that they're doing, which is great to see. And these people are very smart, intelligent, and some are lawyers and in various ways. And then you got other people there who are just regular Joes like me, farmers and whatever. And it was just good to see that. And then it was hot, so if they have it in Louisiana again, it is hot. And so now some of the negative aspects, I guess, is some of the stuff like you go and you're making motions on things like resolutions, and I haven't seen this, so I'm reading it like 5 minutes before they do it. I'm like, I don't know what I'm voting on, and that's an issue. And then procedural stuff. Some of the stuff I don't understand how they go about making stuff, and then Robert Rules of Orders, I don't get it. And how some stuff is sent back to committee and some stuff is not. I don't understand it. So that's just a little negative aspect. And then John's going to disagree with me on this, but also during the business of it, I don't like music and the preaching. Just do business. That's what the pastors' conference for. Just do the business. But they do that, and then you're crunch time where the business is going over time, and then people are just trying to hurry up and get out, and they're just voting on stuff just to get out gone, and that frustrated me. And so I just wish they would did that differently. I don't get a vote in that, but because it's a business meeting. Why are we singing songs? So
on the podcast I listened to today, they were talking about historically, and I bet Brother Keith, you probably remember when they used to do 3 days of business for that very reason, to give time to discuss.
Yeah.
Because I agree with you that the business gets crunched.
But
I also think we would all be in our flesh if we didn't have some worship every once in a while.
Well, but that's all right. That's what it's for. It's the business meeting. It's we're there to do business, not sing songs. But that was just my, I guess, pet peeve. And then what else? Of course, down in New Orleans, the food was great. But the biggest thing I would say is I got to meet some interesting and different people from all walks of life. So.
Yeah, and so going into it, and David and I are in D group together, so we've talked about a lot of this stuff coming into it. But there was huge concerns over, in our minds anyway, I think all four of us, over some of these ideas of egalitarianism versus complementarianism. If you don't know what those words are, complementarianism is basically that God has made men and women equal, but with complementary roles. And the Bible lays it out. That's why we have Ephesians 4 and 5, and then we have in Galatians and Colossians. There's different places where those things are laid out really clearly in the Scripture. But there's a segment of the Big C church that would be, they would call themselves egalitarian. They would say, no, that's not true. Everybody's equal and everybody can do whatever they want. You know, that God doesn't discern the difference in husbands and wives. They just have to work it out on their own. And, you know, they have a different, that would not be our view in this church or the Southern Baptist Convention. The Baptist Faith and Message is clearly a complementarian statement of faith. But coming into this week of business, that was one of the issues that was very prominent. I'm sure you've seen it in every media outlet, and depending on which one you were watching, they tried to turn it in a negative way, or some not. Some gave it a positive. I, for one, and David and I had this conversation, I was very encouraged with the votes. Specifically, there was it 3 or 4 churches? There's 3 churches that were brought. So the process is that, so let's say we lose our minds and we hire Joyce Miller as a pastor at First Baptist Church, okay? And so she's going to start preaching every 3rd week, Kevin, Brad, Joyce. Kevin, Brad, Joyce. So,
I second the motion. All in favor, raise your hand.
So let's say we did that. And then, so we're still giving cooperative program. We're still cooperating with the Union Baptist Association, or Union Baptist here, and the Tennessee Baptist and so forth. Well, the way the system is set up within the Southern Baptist Convention is that someone, probably someone local from our convention, or from our association, would contact the Tennessee Baptist Convention or the Southern Baptist Convention and say, hey, those idiots over there at First Baptist are not following the Baptist Faith and Message. This is what they're doing. And so then that goes to a committee called the Credentials Committee. There's one with the TBMB and there's one with the SBC. And then they investigate the claims, and if they deem, yeah, you're right, they have hired a woman pastor, and that doesn't line up. And I'm just using that as an example because that's the main thing we're talking about. It would be the same if we weren't preaching the atonement, or if we were baptizing infants, or if, you know, we had, pro-homosexual rallies in our church or something like that. And so any of those things, they would take that then to the Credentials Committee. The Credentials Committee would come and investigate. They would come to a service probably and just be here and see what's going on. They would interview us and whatever. And then they would go back and report to either the Southern Baptist Convention or the Tennessee Baptist and say, yes, these people are not following our standard of faith. Or no, it was brought, but they are following. So they would then give a recommendation. It's brought before the convention as it gathers, and they hear the evidence. They vote whether or not that church is in friendly cooperation with the convention or not. Then that church has the opportunity before the next year to appeal that decision. So last year, we voted that Saddleback Church in California, where Rick Warren is the pastor, that they were not in friendly cooperation because they had ordained not just a woman pastor, but women pastors as part of their staff. And that this new pastor that is taking Rick Warren's place, it's a couple, they're a teaching team, all of these things. So it was real clear, they made it real clear. So last year we voted that, but then this year they had the opportunity to appeal. Them along with 2 other churches, one about abuse issues and one other that had a female pastor. So those 3 churches brought their appeal. So before the messengers, they stand up and they have 3 minutes to say, this is our appeal. This is why we would ask you to overturn and allow us to stay. And then there would be someone either from the executive committee or the credentials committee to respond to that church, and then the convention would vote. So that happened with Saddleback and 2 other churches. All 3 were, it was affirmed by overwhelming majorities they were not in friendly cooperation. 90%, yes. Saddleback, it was like 88.9 or something like that. And the same with the one from Louisville that had the female pastor, it was over 90%. And so to me, that was an encouragement to be reminded that, hey, the convention as a whole is still in line with our statement of faith. Are there pockets? Are there issues? Yes. And so that's where the way things have to, are dealt with, the way it's laid out. One of the things, David and I were talking about this earlier, we voted to amend the Constitution of the Southern Baptist Convention to have a plank in there, that's not the right word, but if Brad were here, he would know the right terminology. I don't know all the proper terminology, but basically to say this is an important issue that we specifically, if a church is not, if they're hiring and ordaining female pastors, that's an issue that is of first importance. That was based on some of the stuff I listened to, even getting ready for tonight. That was a much more historical thing than I realized, because that's not been done but maybe once or twice ever within the Southern Baptist Convention. There was also an amendment to that part of the Baptist Faith and Message voted on that defines the word pastor. The way it reads, if you have a copy of the Baptist Faith and Message and you read the part about pastors, it says that the pastor is to be a male according to the Bible. I should have read it specifically, but the way we amended it, it now says the pastor / elder / overseer must be a male. And so that's the biblical terminology that is the office of pastor. Those three words. Yes, yeah.
Because they amended that, but then the guy came up with his motion to change the Constitution. Then some guy amended that to include those, and it passed.
Yeah, that's right.
But they still got to vote on it next year for it to go into effect.
It has to be voted on twice before it actually is permanent.
But then a motion was made by James Merritt, along with, he made the motion, but there was J.D. Greer, Ed Litton, and some other past presidents there to make Bart Barber, who's the president now, a committee, I guess, task force they call it, to see what closely aligned with means.
Yeah. Friendly
cooperation, what that means. I don't know if that's good or bad. I don't think it's going to be good, but that's just my opinion. But because they may come around and say that, well, that means women can be pastors, and then so that make my laws amendments. Maybe I don't know.
I don't know either.
But I don't know why they would do that.
Well, I think it had to do with the procedural side.
It could
that
be.
I didn't really understand as well.
Well, we'll just see how that plays out. But another thing that was really weird was the 990 audit. So a motion was made for if you don't know what a 990 audit is, so if you're a 501(c), if you're a nonprofit, you have to give what they call a 990 to the federal government to show where all your money's coming from, where it's going, basically. And they just wanted to make public to everybody. And it got voted down, like, not even close, which is weird. I don't know why we don't want transparency. And so I don't understand.
It seemed to me like that was that form is just a confirmation of what the information that we already have in the budget. So I don't really understand why it was a big deal.
Correct, because the government, you already have to give it to the government for tax purposes.
Yeah.
So all you just make it public.
And in the book of reports, there are financial reports for all the seminaries and all of that, so it's not like it's not there. I just don't know what.
Well, the 990 breaks it down a little bit.
Okay.
A little bit more detailed than
that's why he's a banker and I'm not.
Just income and because the reports just has what's coming in and then what's going out. But this has it broke down a little bit more where's money coming from and then where's it going to. And then, so that was the other, that was strange to me.
Yeah, I agree. I don't really know exactly all about that. So.
But I don't know the hearts and minds of people, so.
Right. I think, does anybody have a specific issue that we haven't covered or something you're thinking, hey, I'm wondering about this? Yes. Right. Yeah. Right.
Correct.
What we're voting on. Yeah.
But why are we cooperating is the question. So because they kept saying their big thing was we got to share the gospel. We got to go on mission together. Okay, well, what's the gospel and what's the mission? Well, they never said. So, like,
Well,
I
we
mean,
have a
I
Baptist
know what
faith
we're
message.
saying,
It's
but
pretty clear.
But if it's maybe clear to us, but then, well, what does Rick Warren think? Well, if he thinks that women can be pastors, then what does he think about, well, communion? What does he think about the so, which he may be fine in those other areas, but then you got to, like, where can we agree or where can we disagree to still be friendly?
Yeah, exactly.
Is the question.
And I think that is hopefully what that task force will do.
I hope so.
Because there may be some things that are even in the Baptist Faith and Message that different churches kind of, what's the word? No, I wouldn't say interpret, but apply differently.
Correct.
You know?
Yeah.
And that, I think, is where we got to figure out what those things are.
Correct, because if we don't believe women should be pastors, which we do, but then I saw single female women being sent to the mission field. So, like, well, where are they? Of course, they can't say where they're going in some areas, but it's like, but what are they doing?
Right.
So,
well, I think, I mean, I think about some of the people that we know personally from here, from White County, that are on the mission field. They're a part of a team, and so that woman may
but they don't really say. They just say she's going to.
So I think that what I hear you saying is that do we trust that the motives of the people in charge are good? Correct. And that's the question. And so when we look at, for me, when I see J.D. Greear make a motion, I don't think of it as a negative thing because I've listened to tons and tons of his sermons. And I've been impacted greatly by J.D. Greer's ministry over the last 15 years. I've read several of his books. So when I hear him speak, I don't come at him with a question. Now, I know there's a lot of controversy from a few years ago of some statements he made about homosexuality. If you go back and listen to the sermon, and we can sit down and talk about it, what he was saying was in the list of Romans 1, homosexuality is one sin among many. And so we have to be careful that we don't emphasize one in the list and skip over the others that apply to us. Emphasize one that doesn't apply to me personally so that I skip over greed or dissension or malice or what, because they're all in the same list of sins. And so I've even heard him say after that statement that he made in the sermon, he wishes he hadn't said it that way because it created so much issue and it was misunderstood so vastly by so many people. And so I'm not saying that this is not a vote for J.D. Greear thing. I'm just using him as an example because for me personally, I don't come at him with a questioning mindset. Now, I want to be discerning. He's not perfect. He might say something or believe something that I don't think is biblical. That may be true. But I think that I think that he's a godly guy. And the same would be true for others. Well, but then there's others that I don't know anything about, so.
Yeah, because there's most people that make motions, I have no clue who they are.
Exactly.
And there's 47,000 churches, so they're not all agree on everything.
You're right.
But it should be.
Yes, sir. Keith. Brother Keith's got a question or a comment. Okay. They have no power here, right? Sure.
Well, of course.